I'm giving special credit to Dan Rupp because he did a great job with the snapshots yesterday, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah, Dan, fantastic.
We can barely hear you. Do I have to? Is that my volume? I have to. No, I can't hear at all.
That's your board then.
Okay, now talk.
Hello.
It still can be louder. Come on, join the fun.
Yay!
Yeah, join. Your volume is way too low. What don't you think? Put your headphones on. Listen to Dan. Say something.
Say speak.
Speak.
Oh, that's not good enough. We need more Dan.
We need more Dan. More Dan all the time.
The right angle on the mic.
This is for punk lighting.
This is for punk lighting.
This is for punk lighting.
The English version. Fuck you.
Fuck you, Jeffrey Sargent.
Fuck you. Fuck.
Fuck you, Dan.
Fuck you, Dan. I hope we're not streaming right now. Don't put the streaming on till we're on the air.
If we're streaming, I apologize on behalf of both those Bohemians, Dutchie.
Okay, we got up 1 minute, so I'm going to have to have silence on the set.
This was for punk lighting.
I said 1 minute.
He said, shut the fuck up.
This was for punk lighting.
I'm going to do it one more time.
What part of our word up, princess? That's quiet.
It's raw, it's uncensored, it's live 24/7. It's chaoticradio.com.
Wake your asses up.
Oh my gosh, I know what's going on when I hear this theme music.
Yes, it means your unbilled co-host is right here.
It means it's time. This is the Jeff Sargent Show theme song.
Or perhaps the Jeff Sargent with Janky Show.
Oh, hi, I'm your host, Jeff Sargent, with my co-host, Janky.
Morning, peoples. Morning.
Hey, look through the window, look. It's Dan Rupp.
the man Rupp.
Dan Rupp is in the car. Look at him.
Dan always looks dignified with the bobbing head chihuahua on each side of him. I don't know. As a chihuahua owner, it always makes me smile, Dan, to see you and a chihuahua staring at me. Now, we spoiled you bums yesterday. We had the lovely Lisa London in. We had a Hot Chick Friday on Monday with lovely Lisa London. Today, another great guest, and you're in for a real treat.
This guy is a writer for a lot of screenplays.
This guy is a writer, a director, a film historian. Courtney Joyner is amazing. We're in for a treat. He directed the original version of The Lurking Fear by Lovecraft. He wrote Class of 99. He written some of the Puppet Masters.
Was it Class of 1999?
Yeah, well, I shortened the title. But yes,
you
Class of 1999.
Class of 1999. Oh my God, computers are going to shut down. The world is coming.
My God. It was going to be a complete global black, but that's not the movie.
Because computers can't go till past to the numbers 2000. Everything's crypted to one. Why was that such a big deal, Pat?
Remember all the conspiracy theorists on late night radio? Yes. Airplanes will drop at the stroke of midnight in the year 2000 because computers don't know what to do.
Yeah. But unfortunately, computers do know what to do because sometimes they're smarter than us.
Yes.
We didn't have a fallout. The prisons, all the prisons had
the locks weren't going to pop open at midnight. You turn this all the way down. There we go.
They were going to. They had generators with their power lights all around, and everybody's like, I couldn't believe this shit.
Well, remember they kept talking stuff. Yeah, they kept talking about all the global apocalypse. But that's not the one Courtney wrote. Courtney wrote a cool one, The Class of 1999, which was shot by my grandma's house in Seattle. They used Lincoln High. And when they were making this movie, I think in 1990, my poor, lovely, silver-haired grandmother was 2 blocks away and thought it was the end of the world because of all the explosions and everything. They took over an abandoned high school in Wallingford district of Seattle, which is, again, my mom is from Wallingford, Washington, in Seattle. And so my poor grandma would hear the boom and boom booms and the biking and the bikers riding around in the all hours in the night and just thought Seattle was being engulfed in the end of times. So I'll have to make Courtney apologize to my late grandmother again for that. But Courtney is amazing. He's got a new novel. One of the reasons he's coming on the talk. He's got a book called Nemo Rising. His latest is kind of a steampunk Captain Nemo, but we'll let him explain it. So how was your Easter, Jeff?
Well, we didn't have a chance to talk that yesterday.
We were too busy gazing into the loveliness of Lisa London, actually.
Yes, we see. I got this plastic egg here. I'm going to open it up. Some kid gave this to me. I was biker bunny. I dressed
Put
up.
on your head.
I put this on like this. Testing. Can you hear me?
This
Hello.
just in. The Easter Bunny is
speaking out of my eye. I'm the Easter Bunny.
Actually, it's a refreshing change for Dad and I because usually you're speaking out of your ass.
Oh, no, I'm speaking. Earache my eye. Yeah, so I put this on with my. I had a turtleneck sweater with white gloves.
By the way, who's the naked lady on the computer?
And
who's the naked lady in the leather bra on the computer?
Shh, that's our guest.
Oh. Please tell me she's coming in Friday.
You can't have it 2 days in a row. Anyway, I got around and I drove around the city of Claremont.
I can't believe you did that.
I drove through Ontario to Upland. I went into Benny's driveway to see if the kids were there.
Did you frighten his children?
I wanted to frighten his children, but they weren't there.
Did you get sprayed with pepper spray again?
No pepper spray. So
this time without the mask.
After that, I went straight to Claremont to the village, and I was like
homeless Easter bunny.
Oh my God, I was like God. I was
no.
I was bigger than Jesus.
No
I was bigger than Jesus.
No, you weren't. And there's no blaspheming in the Jeffrey Sargent show.
Hey, John Lennon did it. Hey.
Trust me, there's quite a few differences.
I was the Easter Bunny. I meant more to kids than Jesus.
No, you didn't. There were quite a few differences between you and John Lennon. John Lennon had talent.
So I got this egg. We opened up the egg. And look, it's Pop Rocks. Look.
Well, I never liked those as a kid.
What do you mean you never liked them?
They killed the kid from the Life cereal commercials.
Pop Rocks.
I've sworn never to touch Pop Rocks after Mikey.
They killed many teenagers back in those days.
Mikey from Life Cereal took them with Pepsi Cola and blew his face off.
And he blew his face off. Mikey, let's have a silence for Mikey from Life Cereal.
I heard you want Mason Reese to have
OD'd on Pop Rocks and Sugar Pops.
A moment of silence.
A moment of silence. Okay, that's enough.
I'm sure you want to give some to Mason Reese.
So yeah.
And he's the guy that just died, the writer of Hill Street Blues.
Yes, Stephen Bochco.
Yeah, Stephen Bochco.
I never met him.
Somewhat unexpected, but...
Yeah, he was older.
Yeah.
And again, he was one of those cats who's never stopped working. I mean, he was writing... One of the first things he did is he wrote a Columbo episode that Steven Spielberg directed.
Wow.
And he wrote Silent Running with the 3 robots.
Oh, yeah.
I
love that one.
And so, yeah. Oh, that number is correct, right? I want to make sure Courtney has the right number.
Yeah, Dan, my screen is not, it says assistant producer 35.
Producer 3.5 hybrid 1 and 2.
Yeah.
No director has talent in the upper left-hand corner.
No director has talent.
No, I try to push the phone thing down here to get it on the screen, but the assistant producer thing keeps popping up right here in the screen, and I can't close it out.
Okay, I'll go in there and look at it. Hold on.
Because that he's going to be calling, man.
Yeah, we want to make sure. Let's see, 360. Okay, good. He has the correct number.
Waiting to show hybrid, blah, 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 blah. Oh, here it goes. I got it, Dan.
Oh, is it ringing?
No, I'm just waiting for it to ring.
It's like a really sad telethon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Easter went great. I saw my brother's kids. They were wonderful, you know. I gave one of them a King Kong. They loved it.
Jeff, line 1.
Oh, is Courtney called? Hit it.
Phone.
I've got a chimpanzee as my co-host. How do I work this?
Well, it's not showing as ringing here.
If he hangs up, I'm going to break your neck. Live on the air.
It's got to be right there.
It's
Hit it.
no, nothing's happening.
818-905-958. I have the number. You want to call him back?
It's an 818. Okay, yeah, call him back.
Well, so far my thing is not working up here. Great.
No, I lost him.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's do it. We could do it through my phone.
I can't be in this little booth and there at the same time.
Don't say his number on the air. Run over that. I'll make small talk.
Now it's the call's gone. Well, I mean, I have it here. Yeah, it's on my call waiting list.
Okay, Jeff, you want to go over there and get it? I'll make small talk while you dial the number. Because my phone is broken.
I'll have to dial it from this phone. You can't dial from the
Okay,
phone.
can you dial it from that phone? I'm sorry. Jeff, don't screw up on this. He's a good guest.
No,
Great guest.
Give me his number. I'm going to call it on my phone.
Okay, you call. I don't have the number he gave Dan, so let me.
Live radio.
Yeah, and we're not going to use Courtney's number on the air. I love the guy. I don't want him mad at me. Yeah, so in a minute, just show him and don't say it out loud, you guys. Courtney does not need a deluge. But yeah, I hope you all had a great Easter and Passover weekend, and everything went your way. Again, excuse me, my brother's lovely wife, Robin, made an amazing Easter meal. I ate enough ham to choke a large dog. And apple pie, man. That apple pie was killer. So, played with my nephews. Got them 2 great Easter baskets. I don't mind telling you. I am the friggin' uncle of the year. So, in a minute, we'll have Courtney, and Courtney's got amazing stories. Courtney worked with, in the very beginning in the 80s when he started as a kid, worked with Vincent Price, Charles Bronson. Great stories. Okay, cool.
Yeah, being an uncle's fun. It's kind of like being a grandpa.
It is. There's very little responsibility. You just kind of show up with some cool gifts and be fun.
Wrestle with them. You know, that's what my nephews like to do.
Yeah, and then you go home.
I like it, but then I go home and I'm sore as a mother.
I had 2 small children running on my back like an animal, but it was still fun.
That's what I do. And they're like, oh, they love grandpa, but when they get hurt, they go run into grandma.
Courtney.
Greetings, Courtney Joyner. It's me.
Can you hear him?
Oh, yeah. Hold on, Courtney. We're getting the technical difficulties.
Oh, yes. I used the 909, and I think I might have woken someone up.
No. That was our board op. He always sounds like that. Dan the Man Rob.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Dan, but it's true. Courtney, are you ready to talk to us live on the air?
I sure am.
Oh, excellent, sir. Hey, Courtney, before we get into Nemo Rising, which we're very... Why did my mic go dead?
Okay, yours is not dead. I can hear. I'm trying to hear him. I'm trying to put his volume up as high as it can go.
We're turning up your volume, Courtney, just to give you a little more bass. Say something.
Speak closer to the phone.
Okay, well, I've got it, yes, pressed to my jaw now.
Okay.
I wanted to sound like a voice box coming out of your neck, Courtney. That's the only way we'll be satisfied.
That's what you're getting. So.
yeah, just swallow the phone.
Yes. I need you to be like a half man, half phone. Hey, Courtney, before we get on to Nemo Rising, could you tell us the great story and how you got from your first movie from a whisper to a scream made?
Well, that was really the effort of Jeff Burr and Bill Burr and Darren Scott. Jeff and Darren and I had, of course, known each other at USC because we'd all gone to college together.
Right.
And right after I got out of USC, I went to work for a director at Universal named Virgil Vogel.
Director of the Mole People.
Yep. And Virgil was a huge TV director at that time, and he had read something I had written and asked me to come over and kind of learn the ropes working with him, which I did for several years. And during that time, Jeff and I had tried to get a couple of features launched, including I had written a vampire script that Jeff was going to try and direct called The Nightcrawlers. And we came close a few times, but it was, the usual thing that you needed to get the money raised, and we were never able to get enough or whatever, or people gave us a pass because we were just out of college.
Right.
And finally, Jeff and his brother and Darren just said, let's raise the money ourselves. And these are the days back when you would do tax shelter structures for movie financing. And, of course, too, VHS was brand new. So
that's right.
Indie world was just exploding with money, and they needed product like crazy. So it was you could get movies financed. And so we were all living together in the same house. So I went to work on the script, and Darren wrote his segment, and Jeff wrote his, and I wrote two of them. One of them I worked on with Mike Malone, and then I also wrote all the Vincent Price stuff. And Jeff and his brother and Darren, they were the producers. Of course, Jeff was the director, and they went out and they raised the money, and a lot of it came from Jeff's hometown in Dalton, Georgia, where, of course, the movie was also made. So it was really the, if you will, the let's get together and make a movie, scruffy young kids. And that's what happened.
No,
and, of course, the movie was made.
But one of the big shocks in the movie is that even though you three were unknowns, you got Vincent Price, still a big name in horror, to be your crypt keeper for your Tales from the Crypt style anthology. Tell the story and how you guys stalked Vincent Price and got the script to him.
Well, Jeff was determined to get Vincent Price. He really wanted him. I was a little skeptical about it, but Jeff, we had gotten Vincent Price's address from, there used to be a mail order service where if you sent in a couple of bucks, they would send you the street address of celebrities. So we got this. Vincent lived up on Swallow Drive there in above Beverly Hills. So we drove over there one day, and it was me and Jeff and Darren, and we just knocked on his door.
Wow.
And he opened the door. He was in an apron because he had been in the kitchen baking bread. And Coral Brown was there, of course. That's when they were married. And he invited us in and let us sit in the living room, this very lovely home. Of course, incredible artwork on the walls that I'm like staring at. And we told him what we were up to, and he was very kind just to talk to some young punks who had barged their way into his house. But the thing was, he had done the PBS series Mystery with Diana Rigg.
Right.
And that was an anthology series, and he was very pleased with the way that turned out. He was much less pleased with the movie The Monster Club, that was the anthology from the R. Chetwynd Hayes stories.
Yeah, Milton Subotsky and I believe Peter Cushing.
Amicus thing. Yeah, Roy Ward Baker directed it, I think, and it was Price and John Carradine. And he wasn't too happy with that one, he told us. And so he felt he had kind of just, decided to move on from that format. But what we got him to do before we left was just to agree to look at the individual stories, since he wasn't going to be acting in any of the stories, and he would see these as kind of, a group of shorts, and then see if he would be in the bridging device. And he agreed to that, and so we went off and made the individual episodes.
Wow. And then when you came back with them done, what was his reaction?
Well, it was a little troublesome because he, Walter Koner was his agent at that time, and Walter, I think they had been together forever, and, Paul Koner had been Eric von Stroheim and Lon Chaney's agent back to the 1920s.
Wow.
That was Walter's older brother, and Paul was still living, and Pancho, of course, was his son, who produced all the Charles Bronson movies.
Right,
and
right.
Their
Oh,
grandson, wrote American Pie.
Oh,
And-
that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, sure. You remember Paul Kohner was married to Lupita Tovar from the Spanish
From
Dracula.
Spanish Dracula. Lupita Tovar is so hot in that.
And so we're kind of in the mix with all of these people, because of Vincent Price. And but Walter and Vincent came to look at an episode. They looked at the Clue episode and the Swamp episode. Forey Ackerman had seen the Clue episode and hadn't liked it, and actually recommended to Vincent that he not do the film.
What a piece of crap that
Yeah.
Forrest Ackerman was.
Oh,
You know?
God.
That turned into a bit of a problem, and but Vincent went ahead and he looked at it, and it was more sexually explicit than he was really comfortable with, but he decided to give it a whirl, and I forget what we were paying him, but it was pretty substantial, and probably just meant a watercolor or something for his powder room.
Right.
But he decided to go ahead and do it. The problem was we then, in our naivete, initiated rewrites on the script because now we had Vincent Price. So we decided, well, let's really amp this up and, do a lot closer to like what Roger Corman did with The Terror, or Targets, I should say, with Bogdanovich, and really try and turn this into something since we have this man. Well, we did the revisions, which were not good. I did them, and we discussed it, and then I wrote them. And they were sent to Vincent Price, and he got very upset with them.
Wow. Why? What bothered him about it?
Well, what bothered him about it most was not so much the material, but the fact that he hadn't been consulted.
Wow. So what he agreed to is no longer there.
Yeah, we're just we were still feeling our way and what have you, and he got pretty upset with us. And I remember he was on a cruise, and we had our production office. We were over at Roger Corman's Venice.
Oh, you're at the lumberyard. You're at the famed lumberyard.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
And we were building those sets, and Vincent Price was on a ship-to-shore radio phone call with Jeff, and he's yelling at Jeff,
wow.
ship-to-shore.
Wow.
I remember that.
What did Jeff? Jeff must have been horrified being yelled at by Vincent Price.
Oh, it was something. And we finally went ahead, and he came in to talk to us, and he was not, he was kind of angry at me because I went up to him and I just told him I was completely responsible for the rewrite, which really wasn't accurate. But the fact was,
you fell on the grenade.
I fell on the grenade because also, too, I was not going to be the one who had to direct this man.
Right. Oh, my God. That's right.
So I felt, let's do this. It wasn't being noble. I thought I was just kind of being practical. But fortunately, that day, Clue was there. Martine Beswick came down. David Del Valle had arranged for some other people to come who were friends of Vincent.
Smart. I love David.
That's right. And later on, Hazel Court visited him on the set, so did Roger Corman. So he realized we were sincere. We were just, inexperienced guys. And we went back to the old script. And here's the thing that just, again, showed that he wanted to be involved. He didn't want to felt like he was being cast aside or anything, which was never our intention.
Wow.
But I had written his death scene with Susan Tyrell as a poisoning because he was a pretty, he was an older man, and we didn't want him, rolling around on the floor doing something physical where he could hurt himself.
Or squibs.
And I'll never forget, we were all sitting around going through the script, and Vincent Price looked up and he goes, "Oh, I think she should slice his throat. That's much nastier."
Wow.
So the switchblade into the neck was actually his idea.
Wow. It's so shocking because Vincent Price is such an icon. To see him stabbed like that, his throat cut was so weird.
Yeah.
And that was his idea. So I again, it was just a case of he wanted to be part of the process, and he had be treated frankly with the respect and the honor that he so deserved. And we had just stubbed our toes. We weren't doing anything deliberate, but it all got straightened out, and he was Lovely to work with. He was very nice to us. He was very nice to my mother, and she came out to watch some of the filming, and there you go.
Wow. Now, Courtney, are you from California originally?
Pennsylvania.
Wow. Talk about that. What part of Pennsylvania? What made you want to make movies?
Well, Pittsburgh. You know I was in Dawn of the Dead, right?
Shut up. You were in Dawn of the Dead?
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me.
How did that happen?
Well, we were, I forget actually how we found out about the call for extras, but they were shooting out of Monroeville Mall.
Right.
I went to, I was from Sewickley, Pennsylvania. I went to Sewickley Academy with me and Rusty Cundiff and Greg Nicotero.
Fear of Black
Caitlin
Hat
Clark.
can be. Greg Nicotero is now the big director, effects guy on Walking Dead. And Caitlin Clark, you said?
His brother was in my class, and Greg was, he was about 5 years younger, so he was best friends with my best friend's younger brother. So we would I remember I'd go to parties at the Nicotero's house. I remember this so well. And Greg took me upstairs to his room, and he was a kid. He was like 14 or 15 years old. Showed me this work that he was doing, these sculptures and everything. It was really impressive.
Wow, then he's just a high school kid?
He was a kid. Yeah, he really was. It was really something. Boy, he was so, and because he knew I'd been an extra in Dawn of the Dead, everything was about Tom Savini. I mean, Savini was his hero.
Wow, things changed. Wow.
And so that was, absolutely, sure.
Now,
but they were snowed in out there at Monroeville Mall, and I forget, again, how I ended up doing it, but it was me and a couple other friends. We tromped on out there, and I remember Richard Rubenstein was one of the guys who was actually painting zombies gray because they were running out, they kind of run out of people. So they were sticking mustaches and things on folks just to, double and triple up zombies.
Sure.
And, there is a still of all the zombies trying to break into J.C. Penney's.
Yes.
Pressed up against a glass door. I'm the zombie wearing the glasses. That's me. I'm dressed in a doctor's coat.
That was you. I remember that one very good. I go,
wow.
That's me.
How many days?
Yes.
How many days were you on that card?
I think about 3 or 4 because, again, they were having so much trouble getting people out there and who would, consistently show up, and I was so thrilled and excited. So,
wow.
How long did it take you makeup? I know some people were taking longer than others if they're, depending on how close they are to the camera.
They never did anything with a prosthetic with me. It was just the gray paint and some black around the eyes and stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was very fast, yeah.
I love that. So did Romero give you any direction?
No, George Romero got kind of mad at me because
Go on.
we were he had a special effects man on the movie named Gary Zeller, who
inventor of Zell-Gel. He invented the fire retardant.
And this was the guy who had worked on The Godfather and all this stuff, and he was a big weapons guy. And everybody was just kind of, pitching in to do what they could. And I started talking to him. He said, have you ever rigged a bullet hit box? And I hadn't. But he said, go ahead and do this. Just tuck all the wires underneath the contacts. So I did. I rigged a bullet hit box.
Wow.
Gary said, oh, look, it looks great. We go down to the set, and we plugged it in. When we did, it automatically set off like 3 bullet hits that were on connection.
Wow, that's cool.
Circuit.
Oh.
So anyway, there was a reporter there from Rolling Stone magazine, and she got blood on her. Now, she thought it was great. She said, this is perfect. I'm going to write this, and everything else. I think George Romero got a little miffed because he thought it made him look a little on the amateur side.
Right.
It was, it was making horror movies.
Right.
Is what it was. But years later, George was down at USC for a screening of Monkey Shines or Dark Half or something, and anyway, I went up to him and I reminded him of some of the guys that I knew back in Pittsburgh that he had worked very closely with that I knew, like Rudy Ritchie. And we had a very nice chat. And then I mentioned that I was actually the guy who set off the bullet and Romero's face completely changed. You know, he was a big man. He was a tall man. And he looked down at me and said, "Oh, that was you?" And walked away.
Why would you tell him that?
Well, I thought now it'd be, so much time had passed. Oh, it would be a humorous anecdote. No harm, no foul. Nah.
Wow, he's Cuban. They carry grudges.
Well, he did in that case. Anyway,
wow, that's so funny. So 3 days in the mall for that scene.
Yep.
And that's
at
what
Monroeville Mall, yeah. Well, I was a zombie. I was a doctor, and also I was a zombie in a flight jacket, and I was grabbing somebody by the ankles who were trying to get up into.
And the Scarlet, was that at the end of the movie when Kid Foray is trying?
I can't remember who it was.
But he's trying to get up the ladder, and you guys knocked the ladder over.
Who was the helicopter pilot?
Flyboy. That would have been Steven something.
Yeah. And anyway, I was one of the guys trying to pull him down and all that stuff. Yeah.
But that's amazing to me. I mean, did you realize it was going to become the knee plus ultra zombie movie of all time?
No, absolutely not. Of course, I knew all about George Romero because I was from Pittsburgh and everything else. But, people kind of forget that fallow period after Night of the Living Dead with...
There's always Vanilla, Jack's wife, all that crap.
Exactly, and even I loved Martin, but again, these were kind of seen as regional movies. It didn't have none of them broke out.
Never.
The way Night of the Living Dead had. So he was still kind of considered a local guy.
Wow.
I mean, he was a famous local guy, but he was a local guy, and of course, Dawn of the Dead, changed all that.
Wow.
And then, ironically, I wrote a movie that UFD ended up distributing.
Which one?
Class of 1999.
Was Class of 1999 from UFD, the producers of Dawn of the Dead?
Yeah, well, they bought it. Vestron made it, but when Vestron went out of business, UFD bought it.
I'm really excited, by the way, Courtney. I just found and watched again Class of 1999 on Amazon Prime.
And they brought out that really nice Vestron special Blu-ray edition of it that came out just a couple of weeks ago, and boy, it sure looks terrific. Well, Mark Irwin shot the thing. So
RoboCop,
Yeah, absolutely.
But that movie, it's amazing looking. And Mark, I believe it was the same guy who did Commando, right?
Mark Lester, yeah, absolutely.
Wow, and Firestarter. Tell us, where'd you get the idea? The robot teachers doing Westworld in a high school was hilarious. The robot teachers and everything. Talk about that.
Well, I got that job because Erwin Yablans recommended me to Mark Lester. Mark had come to a screening of Prison that we had at MGM, and I had never met him. I, didn't know what he looked like or anything. And Erwin, he liked the movie, and Erwin said, "Look, you ought to hire Courtney. He can do this."
Wow.
Because Mark was going to produce the picture himself, and he was going to own it, like he did Class of 1984.
Right.
So I met with Mark, and his partner at the time was a screenwriter named Stanley Mann.
Was that Abby Mann's son?
Was big stuff. I mean, good Lord. We think about Meteor and stuff like that, but also Eye of the Needle and the Conan movies and the Mark, and he was a big boy, and he had some Academy Award nominations behind him and everything. But now Stanley had written the adaptation of Firestarter, and he was doing a lot of work for Dino De Laurentiis, and he and Mark had come up with this idea of these android teachers, but Stanley had written a treatment. But it was, but that was as far as he was going to go because he was a big he was in
WGA
writer, a big screenwriter, and his salary really couldn't be supported by the budget they wanted to do the movie for. So he was an associate producer on it, and good Lord, I learned a lot from him. But they had an idea where the teachers were in kind of like these giant caskets, and they would come out, and they were like androids. Or rather robots. They looked like RoboCop, and they were tethered to the coffins with like kind of electric cords coming out of their heels,
like umbilical cords.
and like umbilical cords,
Yeah.
exactly. And so that was, and the idea was, if a teacher starts having a problem with a student who gets unruly or, God forbid, pulls a weapon or whatever it is, then you press a button and this thing comes out of the wall and takes care of the student and then goes back into the wall and you go on with your teaching. So
Yeah. Remember that, Patrick, for future reference.
And I jumped in and we changed it up and what have you. But God, I just love Stanley Mann. I worked out of his office. We were over at General Service Studios, right next to Sid and Marty Krofft.
Really?
Oh, how fun that was.
Let me tell you something, guys. Seriously. Mark's office had windows on like 3 sides. It was very nice. You would sit in that office and see the most astonishing parade of beautiful women going in and out of Sid and Marty Krofft's office I've ever seen.
Wow. Remember, they found Electro Woman and Dinah Girl, who are still incredibly hot.
Yeah.
It was really something. We would just sit there and go, oh my gosh. It was just, good Lord.
You probably expected to see Weenie the Genie and Witchy Poo, right?
I have no idea. Yeah, exactly. I didn't expect this. And, there's Mark, doing movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they're not coming into our office. So,
By the way, that's true. Mark had the bigger rep at the time, and Sid and Marty Krofft were still getting the babes over the Arnold movie guy.
Well, they sure were then.
Wow.
But the thing was, with working with Stanley Mann, and I would at night, sitting there in the office, I would pull out the scripts for Conan the Destroyer, and I would look at his original draft, because I think Eye of the Needle is a brilliant adaptation, and he really was just top flight, and he was a great guy, and I would sit there and I would study the way he wrote.
Would you really?
Kind of apply. Sure. You had this tremendous teacher right there in front of you, but it was for real. It was practical because I had to churn out pages. I was being paid, and this thing was going to get made eventually, and that's what happened.
No, was it exciting for you because that played theatrically and everything? And
well, the thing was, I was very lucky, Pat, because even though we were doing all these big pictures, my first 4 movies all played the movie theaters, and that became kind of a rarer thing because everything ended up being, for video market and that type of stuff. But everything was going to the theaters then. Independent horror and B movies still played, and every once in a while you'd have a breakout, like whether it was Halloween or Teen Wolf or, My Chauffeur or whatever.
Oh, that's right. People forget what a hit that was, for Crown International.
Yeah, but those movies made real money, and they played in movie theaters. And, of course, drive-ins still existed then, and so that was kind of phasing out. But it was the exposure of the films in movie theaters that also boosted their profile when they went to cassette for rental only in those days. Remember, to all the whether it was Blockbuster or Hollywood Video or what have you that would order them.
Wow. But was it exciting for you, because you're a huge movie buff and you're like an IMDb on 2 legs, was it exciting for you to see Malcolm McDowell, John P. Ryan, Pam Grier all saying your dialogue?
Oh, God, yes. I didn't know who had been cast in the movie until I went up to Seattle to do the last work on it and make some adjustments because of the practical locations we finally had.
You terrified my grandmother, as you well know. Grandma McDougal thought it was the end of the world.
Oh, that's right. That's right. I apologize again.
On behalf of the late great Grandma McDougal, we accept. She thought Food Giant had blown up from all the sounds.
Food Giant.
Well, yeah, we set off a lot of explosions, and but I knew Malcolm was going to be in it because I was friends with Bruce Cone Curtis and Malcolm,
producer of Dreamscape.
Yep, and I would see Malcolm at Bruce's house, and right after he had accepted the role, we were at a party together and we talked about it. So I knew he was in it, but I thought that was great. But he was the only cast member I knew of, and then I got to Seattle and Mark told me about John Ryan, and I loved John P. Ryan.
Wasn't he amazing? He
was great.
He slapped me on the...
and he was a great guy, and Pam Grier, Pam had some health problems.
Yes.
So she hadn't been working much, and this was kind of her comeback, and she was fantastic. And that was really
was
cool,
this before she did?
I was thrilled.
Yes.
Was that before she did Jackie Brown?
Yeah, long before.
Yes.
Like
Okay.
6 years before. But Courtney, I mean, the amazing. By the way, John P. Ryan, I talked to him, and he slapped me on both cheeks, and he goes, "You look so Irish. You should be the Pope." I do remember that. But
poor John with that terrible helicopter crash. That was right after he did our movie. He was going to do Dick Tracy for Warren Beatty.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
He got pushed back, and Pat, as you know, John had the big fear of flying.
Yes.
And he goes to the Philippines, and he does Delta Force 2, and he's in that horrible helicopter crash. And he and one other guy, I think, were the only survivors of it.
I didn't know
Remember-
anybody died from that.
No, a lot of people died. Aaron Norris was the director in the movie, and I remember the Rolling Stone article on that Delta Force helicopter crash.
Yeah, I think it was like 4 people were killed. John was one of the survivors, but remember, too, that his left arm was almost completely severed.
Oh, God.
Yes.
And when they put it back on, unfortunately, he caught hepatitis in the hospital,
Bedeviled
and
him.
he never recovered from it. And his left arm was, useless.
Is it still on him? I mean, did it
Well,
hang?
he's gone now, but yeah, it was. I talked to him on the set of Hoffa, and I remember Nicholson gave him a part in Hoffa to kind of help him out.
Well,
And
they were old friends. Yeah.
wow, and but he was one of those great character actor guys, and it bummed me out because once he lost the use of the arm, he was mostly cartoon voiceovers after that. Did you notice that?
That's right. Yep.
But one of the great classic character actors, and he's so good. And when he spanks the kid in Class of 1999, it is so damn funny, I mean,
he was great. And, the thing was, old John used to, burn it up pretty good. And it was fun because when back in his early days, because, with Nicholson, of course, he was in 5 Easy Pieces.
Yes.
That's how far back they went. And
he's the dad, and it's alive, and he's amazing in it,
Well, that's the thing. Remember, Larry Cohen's daughter is also in Class of 1999.
I forgot about that. She's one of the punk girls, and you used to date her, right?
She is, yeah.
Is that the guy that we visited?
Yeah, that's the guy we interviewed.
We were at his house. We were at his house when Pat did an interview. It was great meeting that guy.
Well, but Courtney used to date Larry's daughter, and
No way! Wow.
and the amazing thing about what shocked me going to Larry's mansion is that's the setup. It lives again. You probably already knew this, Courtney.
Yeah.
You used to hang out there, but his house was the set for It Lives Again with the monster babies in the pool.
Yep, that's absolutely right, yeah.
Wow.
We did the interview
But it was-
right at the edge of the pool, and he was telling us how they had to drain the pool because it was all filled with
He
blood.
put fake blood in his own pool. Go on, I'm sorry, Courtney.
And, well, Larry was and continues to be such a wild man. I mean, he is the ultimate movie maverick.
He is.
And, but it was neat. We would sit around, and there was definitely the Cohen connection going on the set of our movie, and but that was really great. And I did a commentary with David Delval and Eric Roberts on Runaway Train.
Wow. Did you really? With Denny, I think that was Denny.
Twilight Time.
Denny
I
Trevorrow's
did it.
first movie.
And it was great to see. And there was John. Boy, he was just burning it up.
Wow.
He was so great.
As the evil warden, he's amazing in that, isn't he? I mean,
Yes, he is.
no. And what was the cool thing is that you have Malcolm McDowell, the star of the Clockwork Orange and If, the classic high school rebellion movies, and he's playing an authority figure. I thought that was hilarious.
Well, Malcolm was, he was kind of starting to really. He had done a number of low budget pictures, medium budget pictures, but he's a working actor. These guys, they just go and they go and they go, and then suddenly, boom, they're right back at doing prestige things again. But there was never any snobbery, no feeling of compromise or anything like that. Of course, this movie was pretty well budgeted. But Malcolm was terrific. He was very dedicated, and I love Stacy Keach. What a great guy he was.
Is he still with us? Is Stacy still around?
absolutely, sure.
Oh, thank God. Okay, good. He's so good in the movie. The movie is so fun to watch. Did you get Jill the part in it?
No. I didn't know. I didn't know Jill Gatsby at all until we got to do the movie. That was not exactly the don't blow that up into something.
Oh, sorry. The meat cute.
Yes, let's pull back on the adjectives and hyperbole.
Yes, sir. Hey, quick question though, Courtney. Were you on the set? You said you were there for adjustments. Did you get to hang in Seattle for the entire shoot, or?
I was there. This was the great. I was actually up there about 3 times. I was there right before we started shooting, and then I came back with. I was with a girl I was dating, and then my father had to do a medical conference in Seattle, so my parents were there while the movie was being made.
That must have been great. Your parents
and
are actually.
And Pop loved the Mike Hammer TV series that Stacey was in, so we got to meet him. But this was the cool. And this is true. We were pulling up. We hadn't done all the blow up at the high school yet. We were pulling up in a taxi and getting out, and Paul Baxley was the stunt coordinator on the movie.
Father of Craig Baxley, who was now a director, but he used to play all the monsters on Kolchak the Night Stalker.
That's right. And Paul is coming down the steps, and I introduced him to my folks, and he was a nice man.
Wow.
And he said, "Oh, well, we love you." He says, "Well, this is what Courtney's wrong, but all he talks to me about is the fact I did Dirty Harry and Charlie Varick," and he's right. That's all about. Not my own movie, yeah. I'm like, come on, Don Siegel.
By the way, it's true. You can't go wrong with Don Siegel. But that's the thing. I mean, your mom and dad are visiting a set their baby boy is written, and at the same time, they're going to watch you blow the hell out of old Lincoln High School.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
Wow. Also, you were there right around the same time. I think you guys were shooting almost at the same time as Harry and the Hendersons, which also used the food giant for a key scene in that movie with John Lithgow.
There was, I didn't know what movie it was, but Pat, you are absolutely correct. I remember there was another film that was shooting because I think we were like either, exchanging steady cams or something. There was a little bit of a back and forth of what was available when because there was another movie. But remember, Seattle got a lot of film production there for a brief period.
Yeah, they would shoot for like 3 days in Seattle and then make the rest on the cheap in Vancouver. Remember?
Yep.
You see stuff like a classic example would be like the Fear with Mark Wahlberg and
Alyssa Milano.
Thank you. Yeah, Alyssa Milano is the best friend, and the lead girl was the chick from June Carter Cash in I Walk the Line.
Oh, yeah, Reese Witherspoon.
Yes. And they would shoot for like 3 days in Seattle. The whole movie would be set there, and then they'd go to British Columbia. Same thing, though, The Ring did, and all these other movies where Seattle would play itself for like 2 days, and then they'd head across the across the water, and then they'd make it over there on the cheap, And
well, there that's just the way indie movies. As we remember back in those days, that was kind of the thing. You put it together like puzzle pieces.
Wow! But that had to be exciting, Courtney. I mean, especially when you were doing that stuff. I mean, you wrote. Let's be honest here. You wrote the original Doctor Strange movie with Dr. Mordred,
Oh, yeah, I did.
Talk about that, because Charlie Band was a big Marvel. He told me he was a big Marvel Comics fan, and I think Kirby did the designs for that for you, right?
Yes, he did. Jack had done a couple of things for Charlie, including what became Mandroid.
Wow.
And had done some... Yeah, and had done some concept sketches and stuff. And he had done concept sketches for something that really was very Dr. Strangelove, Strange-like, I should say, Stanley Kubrick,
right.
Called Dr. Mortalis. And when Charlie asked me to do, I got very excited because I was hoping to work closely with Jack Kirby and what have you, but his commitment with the company was done and whatever, and they were kind of moving ahead. But it was a really great time because what had happened was Charlie had produced a movie called Seed People.
Yes.
And
starring our friend Holly Fields.
Right. And Paramount had taken a look at this thing and said, what the hell is this? They got kind of annoyed, I guess. I wasn't there for any of this, but the dictum came down that they wanted to do something that was more elaborate, had a little bit more production value, and was done on a larger scale than what they had been doing up to that point. And fortunately, that was Dr. Mordred. Now, they were very, very pleased with Puppet Master 3. So,
which you wrote, we should point out.
Which I wrote. Mm-hmm. And they asked me to write Dr. Mordred, and I had a ball with it. And I tried to keep it very much in this, Roy Thomas, Stan Lee, Gary Friedrich mindset.
Marvel Comics.
and again, some of the visuals that they came up with, like that great shot. I always say that shot of the prison planet.
Yeah.
Did you see that miniature, that beautiful miniature for David Allen's guys? My God, that looks like Jack Kirby inked by Vince Coletta.
Doesn't
really
it? Doesn't it?
Now this is a panel from Thor.
Dr. Mordred. Yeah, no, you're doing Thor and Doctor Strange, both of which became $200 million movies. You're doing it on a Full Moon Empire Pictures budget.
Oh yeah.
I love these miniatures that when I see them in films when they're done well. Now, who are these guys that made these miniatures?
This is Dave Allen, who also worked on.
Dave Allen.
Yeah,
okay.
David Allen, who worked on Star Wars, right?
Yeah, well, young Sherlock Holmes is where he got his Oscar nomination.
That's right. Critter Lake Monster and all that,
And David had a long association with Charlie. So, and what was also great fun is when I pitched to Charlie the idea of doing the dinosaur skeleton fight in the museum at the end of the movie, and that was always the wonderful thing. If the idea clicked with Charlie, he would just say, go for it. Now, of course, it was always, you knew it would be done for a certain amount of money, but he never shot anything down if it interested him or he liked it. He'd say, no, let's go ahead and do it, and then we'll really try and figure out a way to do it.
Wow.
So I was allowed a lot of freedom as far as what I was writing and conceptualizing. And when we came up with that sequence, David Allen, it was as close to Ray Harryhausen as I'm ever going to get.
How do you know? How do you know what you're going to get? I mean, you're writing this, but do you have the control? Like, okay, now we got these guys doing miniature and some stop motion things and the effects and like what do you know? I mean, how do you vision this and like who's going to get it to closest the way you picture it in your mind?
Well, I'm pretty good about laying it out on the page visually. So. And, of course, too, we were such a close-knit unit that you would have discussions with these guys.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, David's, Chris Endicott and David and everybody, Mark Rappaport, had all worked on Puppet Master 3.
Wow.
So I knew them, and you would literally just drop into the shop and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, and they would start kind of scratching their heads and figuring things out. I remember when we did Puppet Master, there was a shot of a six-shooter crawling up outside of the wall of a building. And I told David Allen, I said, this should be the Zantai Misfits shot. And he understood
oh, yeah.
And so everybody would speak in that shorthand because we all love the same stuff and we could all touch those buttons with each other. But I'll tell you, this was one thing, just to show you where my brain was. I wrote the dinosaur fight in the museum, and we're going over the script, and David is there in the reading, and he brings up a very interesting point. I had included a pterodactyl in the dinosaur fight.
Right.
And he said, well, we can't do that. And I thought it was because of money and that they didn't want to bother animating a flying creature. No, a pterodactyl, that's been preserved, would not have any wings because the wings are skin.
They thought it through, though.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, if he's a giant fossil, it's the skeleton. It's not the thing that actually, makes him airborne. So I that escaped me when I was coming up with that idea. So goodbye, pterodactyl. But what we ended up with was so terrific, and I was just thrilled that they did a really elaborate stop motion dinosaur sequence.
Okay, Courtney, we're running into a solid break, so we're going to, that was what the music was telling me. So we're going to do 2 minutes of absolute silence and then come back for the rest of 5 minutes of absolute silence, and we're going to come back to finish this. Is that okay?
You just send up a flare, and we'll do it.
Okay, call you back in 5.
Okay. I just leave him on the line?
I don't think so. Give him 5 minutes to grab coffee. You know what I mean?
That's for you, Patrick.
Yeah, mom is still 20 years ago. Mom is still in the analog world.
Doing the 10 cents a minute thing.
Yeah.
When we first had cell phones.
Your father would go, get the fuck off the line. I don't care if I can hear you. What are we back at?
Yeah?
Hey, Dan, when we back? Okay, we're going to be back in a minute. Here we go. 2 minutes. Are we back? Yahoo. Okay.
Welcome back to the Jeff Sargent Show.
Woohoo! Here we are.
Chaoticradio.com.
Chaoticradio.com. The sound of the Inland Empire coming at you worldwide. We're back with Courtney Joyner. We'll be
I think
back.
we are.
As soon as Courtney picks up.
He's probably like a
Hi, you're
Courtney.
on the Jeff Sargent Show.
Are you ready for the exciting second half of the 2-hour period with C. Courtney Joyner?
Oh, it's beyond stunning.
We're honored, sir. Hey, when I did a movie in Colorado with Brian Thompson, he kept laughing because I kept throwing Dr. Mordred questions at him.
Brian works an awful lot with my friend Sheldon Lettich, and so I see Brian a few times a year, usually at Sheldon's house, and he told me once that he was amazed how often people come up to him and ask him about Dr. Mordred, because, that was just a very quickie job for him, and, Buffy and all these other wonderful things he's done, X-Files and everything
Terminator,
else.
for God's sake.
Cobra,
Cobra!
But,
you know what? He'll
yeah.
he'll do that Way of the New Flesh. I made him do on his birthday party. We were heavily drinking on location in Colorado. He would do the Way of the New Flesh speech from Cobra for the crew.
Oh, there you go.
He's the mugger. He's one of the 3 punk rockers Arnold steals the clothes from in the beginning of Terminator.
That's right. That's right. It's his jacket.
Right. Let me guess. Wash day tomorrow, Wow.
With Bill Paxton.
With the late, great Bill Paxton. Yeah, I mean, hey, did you ever write anything for Bill?
No, I never did. I met him once or twice, just along the way. But, no, never did.
It's amazing to me, Courtney. Your body of work is so huge. Do you have I know we're going to talk about your new book, but do you have a favorite of your own film work?
Well, yeah, it always goes back and forth. And now that there's so much interest in the full moon stuff, you kind of look back at that with so much fondness, because that really was film school for me.
Wow.
And I'm so glad so many of the movies that we did. Of course, we were lucky; we were Paramount and all that stuff in those days. And so, and of course, I got to direct.
Yeah, you directed Lurking Fear, right?
And I did Trancers and then did Lurking Fear, and so at least I got the chance to give it a whirl twice. I'd love to do it again eventually, but I don't know, Pat. That's a tough question, because most of the movies I was involved with were kind of assembly line pictures, and but looking back on them, and the ones I think turned out well, I still am I'm proud of Prison. I think
it's a great movie. I mean, Rennie Harlan's first American movie, I believe, right?
Yeah, it was, and I'm proud of the way that turned out, and I like a CBS movie I did very much for Pierre David called Distant Cousins that attracted a good deal of attention when it came out, and so it was. But again, you kind of go, well, this one and that one, and then you look at it and you go, it's not that bad. But I'm not really, Sunset Boulevard, Lawrence Johnson, sitting here day and night watching my old film.
You must not have basic cable.
Yeah. So,
but see, Courtney, that's why I knew who you were when doing the magazines and stuff. You would do a low-budget movie, but you would put a ton of personality in it. You would put quirk in it. I mean, Class of 1999, I would argue it's kind of a trenchant political commentary. I mean, the kids' battle cry at the end of the movie, let's go in there and kill some teachers.
Well, unfortunately, I think, that was also working with Mark, and he had already done Class of 1984 and kind of foretelling some things. And sadly, a lot of what we were talking about, and we were trying to make some points, even within the context of a big kind of drive-in flick, AIP style. But a lot of the stuff we predicted has sadly come to pass, which I think is unfortunate.
The metal detector to get into school was meant as a joke when you did the movie in the early 90s, the late 80s, early
everybody
90s.
thought that was absolutely outrageous. All these things that we said, and here we are, yeah.
Now we're in the age of see-through backpacks and metal detectors because you called it back in the day. And it was, like you said, you meant that as like almost a New Yorker-style joke in the film, right?
Well, it's supposed to kind of make its own point. The idea that we really could be heading into some troubled waters here. And, of course, everybody always looks at the future as a very bleak place. And we were no different.
Dystopia.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but then there we go. It was certainly a point. We made some others, I think, along the way about the effect of corporate America and all these other things that are not the most sophisticated political agenda, especially for a middle of the roader like me, but just things that I thought were good to work into the script. But remember, that was always the way, like the best AIP movies and that stuff that you see in the 60s and the Wild Angels and what Roger Corman used to do. And that those thematic things always found their way into those entertainments, which I always think is the best way to present it anyway, instead of lecturing everybody.
Yeah, but, you get more out of a clever visual or a smart line than you do hectoring the audience, you know?
I think so. I think even if it's not a point that's made in any other way but subliminally, I think sometimes it can stick with you. But again, we're talking about a flick about giant killer robots.
I love that, though.
Guys on motorcycles, and there you go.
And then ending with the gym teacher being smashed in the floor with a forklift, Patrick Kilpatrick. That's a great sequence, you know?
Well, the original idea that we had, what I wanted to do was, because he fights Pam Grier and John Ryan and Kilpatrick, kind of the skeletons of those androids get together and make a fourth android.
Wow.
It was kind of like a giant spider that had all of the equipment that each of the teachers had, and that's the thing that stalks the students in the climax of the movie.
Transformer style.
Transformers, exactly. And we kind of thought about it would be like a Phil Tippett type animated thing. But that was just beyond the budget that Vestron wanted to devote to me. So Eric Allard built that thing, and it was suspended by wires on a railroad track over the side. It was really impressive. I mean, the thing was real. It was a real metallic man stomping around, causing trouble.
That's hilarious. Now, let's talk about your current book, Courtney. You want to tell us about your brand new novel, Nemo Rising. Who's the publisher, and can it be found at Barnes & Noble yet?
It has been in Barnes & Noble since Christmas Day.
Booyah. Sorry.
Yes, that's all right. We were Tor Macmillan is the publisher. And of course they're the big fantasy house, and we were their Christmas release.
The cover is beautiful, by the way. Who painted your cover?
I don't know. It's funny, Pat. When I got some thumbnails of some ideas, they sent somebody from the art department sent me a little note saying, "Are you going to do the octopus thing?" I was, what is the octopus thing? What in the world? Then I realized they were talking about the squid fight from 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
You're damn well better now.
I said, I kind of do my own version of it. And so they said, oh, okay, good. And then they came back with some thumbnails that were done just with art marker. And I had to send back the note, and because you could see definitely where they were going layout-wise, but these were not detailed at all. And,
wow.
But I did say, listen, guys, the thing is, it's not a real animal, it's a machine. And then I hear nothing, and then suddenly I get a JPEG of that cover, and I just fell right out of my seat.
Beautiful cover.
Fantastic.
It's on my Facebook page, you guys, listeners. Check it out, or just punch in Nemo Rising and look at that cover art. I mean, when you get a cover back, and it's just so breathtaking. I mean, I was floored, Courtney. It looks beautiful. It sells your Nemo, steampunk Nemo concept right then and there, you know?
Well, I was so pleased with that, and you know, Pat, one of the things too that Tor asked me to do, because the history of the project was so long, and it had started as a spec script, as you know, and it went through all those permutations for such a long period, over almost 15 years, and the book happened because I was at a Western Writers Conference, and I had already started my Shotgun series for Pinnacle Books, so I had written a few novels that had come out, and I met an editor at the Western Writers Conference from Tor, and I met him through my friend Miles Swarthout, who wrote The Shootist.
Wow, yo, my God. He wrote the movie for Don Siegel? Or the book that Don Siegel adapted?
And Miles has since died of cancer, and but he was the one who said, look, you need to talk to this guy about Captain Nemo, because Miles knew all about our history of trying to get the thing done. And at that time, we had a deal to do my Captain Nemo script with a British company, and Hugh Bonneville from Downton Abbey was attached to it, and so was Haley Atwell.
Right after Captain America, right? Right after she first played Agent Carter.
Right off of Captain America, that's right. And all of this made the Hollywood Reporter and what have you. And it was very exciting, and I flew to London for the cast reading and everything. So we were really raring to go. So the publisher read actually my screenplay.
Wow.
And they come back and they go, well, let's really talk about this. And then the movie deal fell through. And I had to call New York and tell the people at Tor, there is not going to be a movie tie-in. So if you think it's going to be a cross-promotion or anything like that, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. What do you want to do? And they said, let's go ahead and do it anyway.
Wow.
So I was very, very fortunate with that. And I ended up working with a wonderful editor named Liz Gorinsky, who was really one of their top-flight fantasy editors. And also I worked a bit with Davey Pillai, who had run Orbit Books. So they were putting me with excellent people, just the top-flight people. And it was Davey's idea that I actually write an additional chapter about the whole history of this thing as a script and what happened and how, you know, it just kind of kept coming up and up and up, but it never was made, and now it's a novel. And not only is that chapter in the book, but they reproduced about 5 pages of my screenplay in regular screenplay format.
Wow.
In the book.
But
so that was a really neat bonus. They gave me an awful lot of TLC, and I'm very, very pleased. I hope they asked me to write the sequel, but I was very, very pleased by everything. And we sold very well, and there's no paperback deal either. It stayed as a hardback and as an audiobook, so it was kind of an expensive item, and we did very well.
Who read your audiobook?
An actor named Derek Perkins.
Wow. Because we just had a British actor who reads a lot of books on tape on last week, and I was hoping it might have been him.
Yeah, this was done through the company Beautiful Mind.
Wow.
And they do, I guess, all the John le Carrés, and for Tor, I think they do the Brandon Sanderson, and I think also Derek reads the Orson Scott Card.
Wow. Well, I got to ask, Courtney, could you give the audience the log line for how would you describe your Captain Nemo for people who want to read Nemo Rising?
Well, it's this is kind of, if you will, this is the kick-ass Captain Nemo. This is the Doc Savage Captain Nemo. So this is, of course, after 20,000 Leagues, but Nemo is not died. He is in Libby Prison in Virginia, and he's going to be hung for sinking the USS Abraham Lincoln. And we're having all kinds of problems in the middle of the ocean with these attacks on ships from other countries by basically giant sea creatures that nobody believes exists, and they think it's the United States essentially trying to draw the world into a giant war.
Wow.
This is right after the Civil War. And so President Grant has no choice but to go to Nemo. The Nautilus is in dry dock.
This is getting
Roanoke
good.
Harbor, and he says, okay, I'll let you go back out to sea, but you have to find out what the hell's going on. And so that's what he does, and it's a deeper, darker secret that even he imagined. But it's an action thing. I always wanted to see Captain Nemo really played that way, not as I mean, he's still a philosopher and still is a statesman, but this is the enraged Nemo. This is Sean Bean as Nemo.
Wow.
Oh, wow. And you always see these things on YouTube. Sean Bean dies in every movie.
Yeah, that's it. And so this is, now, someone had mentioned a little bit about the timeline. I said, well, the problem is with Jules Verne himself, in the novel Mysterious Island, which took place actually before 20,000 Leagues, because it's about the escape of Confederate prisoners from Libby Prison, if you remember.
Yeah.
Verne's publisher wanted him to include Captain Nemo in the book. 20,000 Leagues had come out, and it was so popular, he said, you got to put this character in there. And Verne's like, well, okay, the guy's already dead, but I guess I can do this. They put Captain Nemo into the tail end of Mysterious Island in the final chapters. The problem is he dies in Mysterious Island, and Mysterious Island takes place before the original book takes. So, and he's older in Mysterious Island than he is.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a
quandary.
That frees you up a bit, but I try to be very consistent with the timeline in 20,000 Leagues, and there are references throughout to one of the characters, in fact, is the nephew of the president of the Baltimore Gun Club, which is the club that fashions the rocket and from the Earth to the moon. And there are references throughout, but it's an action piece. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to turn Nemo into kind of this kick-ass character, and I think I succeeded a little bit. I'm certainly proud of it, and it's done well. So I'm very happy about that.
Now I've never seen it, but I love the artwork on the box. I mean on
the book cover.
The book cover. I just love the submarine, because when I watched the submarine, it's got all the engravings and that Victorian kind of artwork to it, kind of like they did in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The submarine there, I was very impressed with that, and that's what kind of it reminds me of.
What'd you think of League, Courtney?
I think it stinks.
But you hated the comic and the movie, right?
Well, the thing was, when I was writing this originally as a TV pilot, the Alan Moore comic book came out, and I stayed very far away from it just because I didn't want to be influenced, and I felt, well, if we crash up against each other, then we do. Fortunately, we did. So I was very pleased with that, but I did go see the movie, and look, Don Murphy was, handed a real hot potato, because so many people had so many different ideas, I think, of what that movie should be.
Right.
And it just kind of didn't really, come together as that. And as far as the design of the Nautilus, I think in the movie it was more the old Verne description of the saber of the ocean,
Yeah.
And again, going back into the Alan Moore situation, then I was like, okay, well, I breathed a lot easier.
When you saw it and saw how terrible it was?
Well, no, I mean, not his comic book, but with the movie.
Yeah.
It was just kind of, I just wanted to make sure even inadvertently appropriating anything. Unfortunately, we didn't. But one of the things that had started In fact, you go back to the 1916 version of 20,000 Leagues that Universal did. In fact, it's their first feature film. The description of Nemo as a Raj has come back and forth many times. Although, of course, when you think of James Mason looks like a U-boat commander with a turtleneck.
Yeah,
You're exactly right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely he does. And of course, that version of 20,000 Leagues was made not long after World War II. So, but I wanted to stay away from the Captain Nemo with the turban and the scimitar and all of that stuff because I always thought that kind of ran counter to Jules Verne's concept of the character in many ways because he is truly a man without a country and a man without an identity. That's the way he lives his life. And so I thought if you have something that tags him culturally, that kind of contradicts, I think, what Jules Verne was intending. At least that was my thinking.
Fair enough.
So I avoided that completely.
Wow. Interesting. Now, is there movie talk around it once again? Because once you lost Bonneville and Atwell.
It has been optioned, and we are going to follow up with a pilot for a television series through MPCA, and so we'll see. Hopefully, it'll get going. One of the producers, Amy Krell, who's been involved with it for many years, has pushed this forward, and also to Quixotic Games, who of course do X-Men and Harry Potter and Star Trek and everything else. They designed the Nemo Rising board game.
Wow, you have a board game coming. Is that exciting?
Well, it really is neat. If you go on the Quixotic site, you'll see we're in development. I think we should have a publisher for the board game here in the next few weeks, and that's very exciting. They did a stunning job on this. And I did it. I approached them and said, look, guys, I have these rights. I'd like to give this a whirl. The board game world is something that's brand new to me. So I was definitely kind of a goober wandering around. I've never even played Dungeons & Dragons.
Well, my friends play that, so there are going to be little miniature game pieces of the sea creatures and submarines and things like that.
They just did a gorgeous job on this thing, and these guys do these beautiful, again, these very high-end, very deeply licensed games, and they've just done a stunning job on this.
No,
even if you haven't read the book or whatever, it's going to be this big kick-ass Captain Nemo board game, and it's called Nemo Rising: Robor the Conqueror.
Wow!
Because my novel also brings in
Master of the World.
So, yeah.
And I remember the late Richard Matheson told me in an interview. He goes, have you ever read Master of the World? I'm just writing it. And he goes, when I did the movie, I wrote it as Captain Nemo in the air.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that was the way Verne really had done it, and in fact, with Nemo Rising, quite honestly, that is the story. It's the Nemo of the sea versus the Nemo of the air.
Wow.
Robor is the bad guy.
Robor is a great name, by the way. I wanted to ask if we can jump around for a minute. Can we talk about Prison? Prison has been running a lot on Comet TV. It's do you get Comet where you live, Courtney?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Comet is this great genre channel anyone can get on their UHF station. It's 56.3 or 24 or 20, depending on what cable services you have. But I was really impressed. They've been running Prison a lot. You have a lot of Green Mile in there, even though it was out before long before Stephen King's Green Mile. With the prison movie you did, there's a lot of Green Mile in it. Do you think King saw the movie?
Oh, I don't know if he did or not. I'd love it if he did. Just to know that he's watched the film would be a great kick to me. When Rennie and I really started working on that,
Rennie Harlan, of course, the director of Deep Blue Sea, former husband of Gina Davis.
Yes, and You might want to say Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 2, Die Harder. You're exactly right. And Fort Fairlane.
Yes, and although the brand new, and Skip Tracer with Jackie Chan, which just came out.
Oh, that's right.
But when Rennie and I, so we were both such fans of Riot in Cell Block 11 and Caged, the John Cromwell movie, even though it's about women in prison with Eleanor Parker. Of course, Brute Force, the great Jules Dassin with Burt Lancaster.
And the amazing Whit Bissell.
Yes, absolutely, Whit Bissell. And that was our thinking. It was that we wanted to kind of honor that tradition.
Wow.
Almost before the Ghost Story. And when I was hired, Irwin Yablans, of course, Irwin ended up becoming my mentor and had such a huge impact on my life. It's almost incalculable.
Wow. Yeah, that's so amazing. Irwin Yablans, of course, the producer of the original John Carpenter Halloween, and he had to do horror because he had such a name in the genre.
Oh, yeah, and when he was running Lorimar, that was the thing. He had this idea of doing Halloween in a penitentiary. That was the original idea.
Wow.
And he hired one of the Lorimar writers to do a draft. The guy took it so literally, it was actually a convict running around with a knife, stabbing everybody.
Not what he wanted.
I read this thing, and I said, well, Irwin, the problem is everybody has a knife in prison. This is no...
Shank.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Shank City, so what is it? And so I was the one, and so I said, no, it's got to be Poltergeist. It has to be a haunted penitentiary. And that was what changed everything. And Rennie had done a movie called Born American.
Yes, with Mike Norris, Chuck Norris' son.
Mike Norris, exactly. And it was a big hit at the American film market. So we were kind of brought together on the movie. We never met each other. Wow. And then we ended up, sharing a house and everything. But it was... Yeah,
you lived with Rennie Harlan. How cool was that?
Yeah,
Talk about that.
Well, I always sum it up by saying he got the girls and I made the breakfast.
But he was the Steven Spielberg of Finland. That's what they always called him. What was it like with this cool ladies man as your roommate? Was it weird? Was it cool? Was it fun? Did you get any
It was fun.
spillover?
We had a lot of fun, obviously, and but now this is real Hollywood stuff here. We were, Andy Robinson is a great dear friend of mine, and his wife at the time was my agent, Irene.
Wow. And Andy Robinson, for our listeners, of course, was Scorpio on Dirty Harry. And if you read my book, You Wouldn't Like Me When I'm Angry, An Incredible Hulk Companion, he was on one episode of The Hulk, and he hated Lou Ferrigno for choking him. Go on, Courtney.
Well, there you go. But, of course, to Hellraiser and all these wonderful
Oh, the father in
things.
Hellraiser, you're right.
Yeah, and then Star Trek and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Superb actor and such a wonderful guy, and he was my baddie in Transfers 3 as a favor. Andy was doing Cobra, and
that's right. You just brought us full circle with Brian Thompson.
That's right.
I love Courtney Joyner.
I'm down on the set of Cobra for a couple of days.
You were on Cobra?
Yeah.
Holy crap!
Now, where was this? What town was this in?
Was it Lincoln Heights?
Supermarket scene.
Oh, where was the supermarket?
You're the disease, I'm the cure.
Yeah, where was that shot? I always wondered.
It was out like Culver City or something, as I remember. And then also I was down there when they were filming the police station stuff.
Was that Lincoln Heights? Was the police station Lincoln Heights, Courtney?
No, it was on a soundstage.
Oh.
I don't remember much. I can't recall now. But anyway, I would go down and visit with Andy and watch him shoot some stuff. But so the movie wraps and what have you, and it opens with a 24-hour Cobra-thon at the Chinese Theater.
Wow.
It's going to be so huge. It has to play 24 hours. So Rennie Harlan and I lived in a house on Orange Drive, right up by the Yamashiro restaurant.
Uh-huh. So
please, Courtney, we must go to Cobra-thon. So we're like, okay, we have to go to Cobra-thon. We didn't have any money. Either he had forgotten to go to ATM or I hadn't, so we're literally scrounging through our couch.
Because you have to go to Coverthon, for God's sake.
Going through our jeans that were hanging around, to try to get together all the money to go to Coverthon. So we go down to the Chinese theater. I'll never forget it. And it was kind of drizzly and cold. And we're standing there, and we have to, make way for Frank Stallone and his entourage. And I later did a movie with Frank.
Which one did you write for Frank?
He was in this movie I did called Public Enemies with Teresa Russell.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes. Teresa Russell. I love her.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, she was great.
Spider-Man 3.
But this is the whole point, Pat. There's Frank. We have to get, and here's Rennie. We're like these wet dogs out there in the rain, waiting to go in to see Cobra. And how many years later is Rennie Harlan directing Cliffhanger?
Wow, you're exactly right. That was within 7 years he did Cliffhanger.
It's like, that really is the Hollywood thing, man. It really can turn that quickly. And, bottom to top and top to bottom and all of that stuff. So, yeah, kind of interesting. I
was in a test screening for Cliffhanger, and I got they made me one of the talking heads, in the focus group. I loved the movie. There was some girl who wanted them to cut everything. I loved the movie. And after the movie, Rennie Harlan walks up to me and goes, thank you for your comments. And I go, thank you for prison. And he looks shocked.
Well, the thing was, I remember when I went to go see Cliffhanger, I still maintain that opening is probably the best thing Rennie's ever directed.
Where the girl falls, that is so scary. In the test,
it is so scary. It really is great.
The test screening, your hands are sweating watching this scene, and when they let her go, you don't expect it at all.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful, But that was again, there we are standing there huddled in the rain. And look what happened.
7 years later, he's directing the guy when you're hustling up money to see the guy's movie. 7 years later, he's directing Stallone. Wow. 6 years. He made it 6 years after it came out. 7.
About 6 years, yeah. How about that?
Amazing. And the weird thing, you look at something he's done like Deep Blue Sea, and that's essentially a full moon movie on a big budget, And
Darren just did the sequel to it.
Wow, yeah, I was shocked. Although, have you seen it yet? I didn't go to the screening, but
I haven't. They had a little screening over Warner Brothers, and I couldn't make it. But he's doing a presentation about it, at Monsterpalooza.
Courtney, we got to catch it. I just want the sharks to be mechanical. They better not be CG sharks,
I don't know. I think the ad looks great, though. I love that ad.
The ad screams, you're going to buy this at AFM, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
No. AFM, for people who don't know, the American film market is like the Oscars for horror and B movies. You've been there a few times. Do you write when you do something low budget, Courtney, do you write with AFM in mind? Like, this will make an amazing poster?
Well, the thing is, Pat, so much of what I've done back in those days was assignment work. So, and the bigger movies I was involved with and the bigger script assignments when I would work at places like Warner Brothers or even Universal, those movies were never made. I got paid for writing the scripts, but the films never saw production.
But all your low-budget stuff, they had to make it because they put the money there.
Did, and then I did some network television. But as far as the AFM goes, there was that point, especially when Canon and all these companies were really thriving. Transworld Entertainment.
Wow, Most Diamonds, Transworld, wow.
All of them. And I worked for every one of those outfits. And it was great because the money was good. There was a lot of opportunity because the need for product was absolutely enormous. Now it seems absolutely insane that guys could walk around with a half-ass poster, and show it to somebody and said, I have Gary Busey and Robert Zadar. Give me $250,000, and they get it.
Yeah, but my God, you've got a movie with Maniac Cop. Here's your money.
That's it. And that was the way it worked, because the foreign revenue on the movies was so big that the buyers would literally, their advances would pretty much, for a lot of movies, pay for the production costs. At least that was always the idea, so that the U.S. side would be the gravy. Or, there were different ways to work the formula, but it was just a smashing time. Now, of course, it was also a bubble.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, yeah, but that explosion of the home market just drove everything just, right up to the ceiling. And for B-movie guys, or, guys like myself and a lot of other fellows who were going from picture to picture to picture, it was really terrific. And there was a ton of opportunity. Now, again, I was writing spec scripts, I was selling them and optioning them or what have you, and you kind of like go, okay, is this one going to go or is that one going to go? And then the phone rings and, you're back doing, another low-budget project. But two, these things were, a lot of them were for cable television and Showtime and places like that, so, there was no reason to hang your head.
And what was great, Courtney, is also in the 80s and 90s, you had stuff like Channel 5 would run something called Movies Till Dawn. You remember that?
Oh, I love Movies Till Dawn, yeah.
And you would see, it was amazing because your stuff would wind up on USA Cable and all this other stuff, and you would have all these markets. I mean, a lot of your classic Full Moon work still shows up on Sci-Fi Channel and stuff. And is that exciting, dude? If you were up at 3 a.m. writing, and you find one of your movies on late night TV, will you watch it?
Oh, everyone. It depends. If I see something I actually go, oh, there we go. Yeah, then, you watch for a couple of seconds, and then you don't. I like to dwell on that stuff because I know it so well. It's always, if somebody is over and we tumble to something, it's fun to sit there and then I tell all kinds of gossipy, nasty stories about making a movie. While we're sitting here watching it. But USA up all night. Oh God, I'll even do this for you. And now back to the skull. I can't tell those two apart.
That's a pretty damn...
I rarely do my Gilbert Gottfried, but just for you guys.
Well, I appreciate that. Rhonda Shear would have been even more appreciated, but we had the lovely...
My talent's only stretched so far, man.
Touché, sir. We had the lovely Lisa London on yesterday who was telling us Menachem Golan stories. Do you have a Menachem Golan story for us?
I was one of the last writers actually put under contract at Canon, but that was when they were 21st Century, and it was actually being run by Yoram Globus and his guys. He and Menachem had split.
Wow, yeah.
So other than shaking hands with Menachem once or twice, and I think once he said to me, "You need to come over to write movies for me."
That's exactly how he talked. I just watched the Canon Films documentary, man. Everybody was involved in telling their stories, man, and it's great, and it's still continuing. Since I saw that, we've had guests, telling their Canon Film stories, and then you tell us, and this is great.
Well, there is going to be a documentary coming out about Empire Pictures.
Wow.
In fact, you know about this.
I've been very excited about it.
Yeah, Celluloid Wizards in the Video Wasteland. And
that sounds great.
Daniel Griffith, the trailer's on, you can see the trailer on YouTube. Daniel Griffith is produced and directed it, and he has done a spectacular job. Of course, the sheer number of interviews and what he has done, the detail, because what it is, it's about the studio, but it's also about the rise and fall of B movies and the VHS, as we said, bubble.
Wow.
It really encompasses all of that stuff. And a lot of these things are not what people realize is the way that the industry often works. And so we really went into this. I'm the executive producer of it. With Dave
seriously?
And very, very proud to be involved with this. I've done, Paz, I've done a lot of behind-the-scenes documentaries.
Incredible stuff.
A lot of that stuff. And Daniel has been responsible for so much of that. But he has just done a tremendous job on this thing, and it's wrapping up now. So you will be seeing it, and I think it's going to really set people up because it's not just a string of funny anecdotes. Of course, there are plenty of those.
Please,
but it
yeah.
really is a look at what happened to the industry through the VHS boom, and also what happened when that went away.
Well, I mean, it makes me sad because it was such a magical era, and I'm so excited to have stuff like Amazon Prime and Shudder, where a lot of these movies and the Popcorn Channel, where a lot of these movies show up. But people forget. Kids today can watch anything. They forget what a struggle it was for a kid in the 80s and 90s to find these movies and get to that theater or
And then finally find that film on VHS and have your VCR eat the tape.
That was. There you go. Well, see, I grew up without VHS, so I guess a friend of mine in high school got his Betamax. I think I was 16.
Which was better pixels on that. I mean,
I remember one Christmas we got my father bought a VCR. We had to wait for Grandma and my family to go to bed so my brothers and a neighborhood friend and I could watch Humanoids from the Deep.
There you go.
The original, by the way. And
well, you're bringing up something, and we always say this. It's not just a matter of us being a bunch of old men sitting on the porch to get off the lawn. Being, of course, I was a classic monster kid, and of course you know how I live. So with and the access to the magazines, the Aurora Model Kits, what have you. But of course, there were a lot of horror movies in the theaters and whatever. But if you were interested in film, there was very little resource other than what you could seek out. And you looked through TV Guide to see what movies were on that week. And you had to really work for your passions. It was not a matter of just clicking a button and suddenly having the TCM library or Warner Archive or the Full Moon Library available to you. That didn't exist. And I think it made maybe our appreciation of movies or the process or whatever you want to call it a little more special and a little more rare because I think we had to work a little harder for it.
Yeah, you're right. You had the secret. Now everything is available on K. It drives me nuts. There's a channel where you can find everything. And I mean, when you'd find an old scary TV movie on, like on Comet this weekend, I was trying to catch up on a bunch of articles. I put on Comet TV and they were showing Gargoyles, the movie, with Scott Glenn.
Bernie Casey.
Bernie Casey, incredibly scary. Bernie, yeah. And it was incredibly scary. I mean, it was like the chance of running into Gargoyles was non-existent. Now you can find a cable channel with everything,
And my God, I still remember I was probably about 10. And I had sent away to the Captain Company.
Wow, from the back of Famous Monsters.
From the back of Famous Monsters for the Castle Films 9-minute silent condensation of The Bride of Frankenstein.
Wow.
And, of course, it took... And, the Captain Company was actually run, I guess, by Jim Warren's parents.
Really?
Yeah. And so, anyway, I guess they would take their time going to the post office because it sure took a long time for me to get my thing. But it finally did, and of course, I've collected all of that stuff for years, and now it's all right here at my fingertips. But that was the thing, to be able to sit there and watch. My father had the projector, and even watch a silent version of that movie, to watch the Frankenstein monster stomping around on my bedroom wall.
Wow.
It was the most magical thing. Because suddenly there it was. And it wasn't common. It wasn't something we had just by going to Best Buy or whatever it was. This was, mowing the lawn and getting the money and sending it away and waiting for it to arrive. And what you got wasn't the whole movie. You got 9 minutes of it, no sound, no nothing, but you appreciated it and you loved it. And that's never left me. I think I still look at things in that way, probably.
And, it's just, now there's a story I want you to tell that, you've showed up in a lot of movies too. But another movie that's been running on Grit TV is what I consider Charles Bronson's last good movie, which is Murphy's Law. with the wonderful Kathleen Wilhoit. And the last time it really seemed like Bronson was really trying to be cool. You know what I mean? There's a scene.
Well,
go ahead.
The Cannon period was a difficult period for Bronson. And after Jill Ireland's death, and he kind of went, but then he came back with a Sean Penn movie. He did 2 movies with my great friend Andy Fennedy. He did The Seawolf for TNT, which I thought was good. But he did Yes, Virginia, There Is a Santa Claus, which he is great in.
I never bothered seeing it. He wasn't holding a gun.
I missed that one.
He wasn't holding a gun, Courtney. Forgive me.
But no, the thing with Murphy's Law that was so much fun was
you show up in a strip club. You're watching his wife, Angel Tompkins, becomes a stripper.
Tompkins, yeah.
And you're in the strip club with your glasses and everything. I laugh every time I see that.
Yeah. I was. We had a friend who did extra casting for Cannon Films, and
Jenna Cunningham, or
he would call me up, and Jeff, and we were right out of college, and we need to make some extra money. I remember Jeff and I danced in, I want to say, Electric Boogaloo or something.
That's the name of the documentary called Electric Boogaloo.
Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. You can see Courtney Joyner and Jeff Burr, director of Pumpkinhead 2, Blood Wings, dancing.
Yeah, we were in this nightclub sequence. Anyway, he called us up and he said, "Hey, would you like to do a Charles Bronson movie called Murphy's Law?" Well, the chance to see Charles Bronson, who I'd never seen in person in my life, and J. Lee Thompson. I mean, oh my God.
Director of the last Planet of the Apes movies.
That's right. Well, and by the way, the Guns of Navarone.
Oh, that too, of course.
Let's come on, let's try and
you know what? But Courtney, you know what J. Lee Thompson is most famous for today, right? You already know this, but our audience doesn't. J. Lee Thompson was the basis William Peter Blatty used for Burke Dennings.
Oh, that's true. Absolutely. For
the director in The Exorcist, who the girl kills. True. Yeah. Because I think he directed...
Now, here we go. Now, okay, Pat, what was the movie that J. Lee Thompson directed that William Peter Blatty wrote?
I believe it was Which Way to the Harem, or it was called Which Way to the Harem, right? With the Shirley...
Well, you're right. It was retitled John Goldfarb,
Please Come Home. You're exactly right. But the original, I think the original title was something like Which Way to the Harem, Mac, or something.
Absolutely correct.
Wow. Yep. Thank you, sir. Yeah, I told Jeff before we went on the air, you topped you are a 2-legged IMDb. I bow to your wisdom.
Yeah, I haven't found anybody besides you that could top Janky here on trivia.
And but Courtney, to listen to you hold forth on movies, but so you're in the strip club scene with Charles Bronson.
Well, let me tell you how that happened. They were shooting it in a Chinese restaurant downtown, and that they converted. And Jeff and I show up, and Charles Bronson is he's having an argument with the assistant director.
Oh no!
And we've seen it. He's perfectly coiffed, perfectly dressed, but they had brought him to the set hours early.
Oh no!
And he was mad.
What, for showing up early?
Well, yeah,
and
because
the AD was telling him something, and Bronson, I'll never forget, goes, "Now you're just screwing me around."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, man. But he was so much shorter than I thought he would be. But you kind of got the impression that if the AD had come clean, that they just screwed up, it would have gone a lot better.
Right, but he tried to BS it out of him.
Yeah, and Bronson. So anyway, they were picking people to be in the nightclub scene, and I didn't get chosen. So Jeff goes up to shoot, and so I'm sitting downstairs, we're waiting around, and I go to get a little cup of tea or something from where the extras are allowed to go, and I turn around, and there's Charles Bronson standing there. He's kind of just staring into space.
Wow.
And I just didn't, I didn't know what to say to him. He was already irritated, and I didn't want him to punch me or anything, but I said, I have to go spit something out. So I go over to him and tell him how much I loved Rider on the Rain.
Wow.
And he looked at me and didn't say anything. So I'm like, well, at least I got it said.
Yeah.
Later on, maybe an hour later, I'm back there, I'm filling out my teacup, and there he is, he's standing there.
Uh-oh.
And he goes, Rider on the Rain. It was Renee Clement.
Wow.
And he starts telling me, and I was like, wow-wee, how about that? Yeah, that was pretty neat. And later, when we go upstairs, and they finally put me right there at the edge of the stage with Angel Tompkins dancing and all that stuff.
You saw Angel Tompkins' breasts at the height of their powers, by the way.
Yes, right in front of me. Oh, yeah. And we watched J. Lee Thompson, and Lee Thompson, I guess, had his party times, but he was kind of through all that. But he used to like walk in kind of tiny little circles, tearing up pieces of paper.
Which, by the way, you see him doing that in The Exorcist. The guy playing Burke Dennings is tearing up pieces of paper from the script.
That is a J. Lee Thompson habit. And so I watched him do it, and Charles Bronson has a line where he goes up to Angel Tompkins. He's mad she's stripping, and he's humiliated because he's a cop and everything. And meets the owner of the club, and it was Richard Romanus or something.
Right. Who Jeff's friend, yeah.
No, that's Robert Romanus, not Richard.
Richard Romanus,
Robert Romanus, right. And Bronson has this line, he goes, you know what you look like standing up on that stage? You look like a whore, and your boyfriend looks like a pimp.
Yes.
God, you got Bronson down, man.
You have him down.
That's great.
I laughed.
It's a great line.
And I ruined the take.
No.
Yes.
What happened?
It's cut.
And so J. Lee Thompson goes, oh, cut. No reactions. No reactions. And I was like, oh, my God. It was just so classic.
Yeah.
And Charles Bronson's standing there, and he keeps going, a whore and a pimp. A whore and a pimp. A whore and a pimp. It was pretty funny. I didn't do it. But later on, my friend Tom Everett was in the movie Messenger of Death.
Oh, it was his worst movie,
by
the way.
Set, and because I had met John Ireland before, and I wanted to go see him, and this was kind of close to the end for him, and say hello and what have you. And I was out there, and Charles Bronson came over, not because he recognized me or anything, but they exchanging pleasantries and whatever. And later on, remember, Larry Tierney is in Murphy's Law.
I'd forgotten about that. Larry Tierney is in Murphy's Law.
Absolutely he is. So Larry calls me up, and he goes, listen, kid, what are you doing tonight? I got to go down and reshoot on that Murphy's Law. So I go with Larry down to the Hancock Park, and they're shooting his scenes, and Larry has me come into the makeup trailer with him. And there's Charles Bronson with Terry Snodgrass and J. Lee Thompson.
Oh, man.
And they're going, and I'm like this, and I'm like, oh my God! And I tried to step out, and Larry had me by the arm and goes, "It's okay, he's with me." So I sit there, and they do rehearsal on the thing. Charles Bronson doesn't, he does his lines, and then he gets up and he leaves. And Lee Thompson stands up. Now, you get this. He goes, "Your ears are new. What did you think?" And I said,
"Your ears are new."
And I said, Diary of a Mad Housewife meets Cape Fear.
What did he say?
J. Lee Thompson, and he goes, oh, thank God you didn't say Navarone. And he walked out.
By the way, but to his credit, people forget that he directed the original Cape Fear. And,
yeah, absolutely he did, and a brilliant job, too.
Oh, my God, and that was one of the movies that ran all the time on Movies Till Dawn. I remember watching that, not knowing, I thought, oh, wow, that was the director of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah, in a different era, but it was neat. And again, I had a few other encounters with Charles Bronson, and I can't say I knew him or, anything like that, but I did get to, speak to him and tell him, drool on him, I guess, and do some things. And he was very nice to me.
See, Courtney Joyner, I thoroughly love you. We've got 2 minutes till break. Could you tell people where to find your stuff, including Nemo Rising?
Well, Nemo Rising is, that's Barnes & Noble and, of course, Amazon and all the independent bookstores. Walmart is pretty good about carrying. They carry my Shotgun series for Pinnacle.
Great books, by the way.
Oh, thank you. That's Shotgun the Bleeding Ground,
Westerns.
Bushwhacked, and then the fourth comes out on Labor Day. That's These Violent Times.
Wow.
And then we're going to be doing number 5 and number 6.
You've gone John Jakes on me, baby.
Yeah, and we're trying to, and so those are. So it's been more of the novels recently. Although we've got a couple of movie things percolating along pretty well. But yeah, we're still out there, still chugging along and staying out of jail.
And now, Courtney, because I'm looking forward to seeing you and hanging out in the bar at Monster Palooza. But let me ask you, where can people follow your adventures? Is there a site you update frequently?
I do. I have ccourtneyjoyner.com, which desperately needs to be updated. But I will say this, that I'm very proud of some of the new commentaries we just did. I just did Pistol for Ringo and Bullet for Ringo for Arrow, Sheriff of Fractured Jaw and Broken Arrow for Signal One. I'm coming up on Arrow doing 2 more Euro Westerns. I am Sartana, Your Angel of Death, and Have a Good Funeral, My Friend. Sartana Will Pay.
Wow, that's a lot.
And those 2, which I usually do those Euro Westerns with Henry Park.
Right.
Those 2 plus all my in front of camera stuff brings me up to a little over 70 some odd times that I've done this now.
Well, I'm honored. I look forward to seeing them. And you, of course, Courtney. Hey, thank you for doing this. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys for having me. This was fun.
This is great stories. I didn't think that were going to happen. I'm like, wow, all this stuff coming out of the woodwork.
I knew that would happen. And by the way, we've never gotten to Devil's Prey with Jennifer Lyons. I wanted to talk about that, too.
We'll have to have you on again because I want to talk about...
Okay, yeah, I'll amp up my Jennifer Lyons stories.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. Courtney, we love you. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, man. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure, brother.
Thank you,
Be
Courtney.
good.
All right.
All right, thanks for listening to Jeff Sargent Show on chaoticradio.com. Up next, we have What the Cat Drags In, a whole day of punk rock and alternative music you won't hear on FM radio.
If he bails, we'll just get someone else for Thursday.